This video is going to focus on the cognitive approach to explaining depression. So there's two theories that you need to know on your specification: Beck's negative triad and Ellis's ABC model. This video is going to focus firstly on Beck's theory. So Beck's negative triad and the AO1 and AO3 for his theory. The next video you're going to watch will be looking at Ellis's model. So Beck's theory looks at three main things. It looks at faulty information processing, developing a negative self-schema, and the negative triad that you need to know for your specification. So the first thing Beck says causes depression is this idea of faulty information processing. The processing that goes on in the depressed person's mind isn't normal, it's faulty, there's something incorrect there. So to give you an example, if someone won £1 million on the lottery and they were depressed, they wouldn't see the positives there. They wouldn't see the positives in winning £1 million. That could be a life-changing amount of money. What they would see would be the negatives. They'd point out that last week someone won 10 million. The week before that someone won 20 million. They'd pick out the negatives even in really life-changing and happy events. The second thing that Beck mentions is this idea of a self-schema that we develop. And a schema is the information we have about something. And Beck says in childhood we can develop a negative self-schema. So unhappy childhood experiences, it might be your friends, your parents, your teachers at school are always criticising you, always putting your work down a bit and giving you negative comments about something. And what Beck said is that this develops, and this experience can help someone or can create a negative self-schema for somebody. So all that criticism creates a negative self-schema, a negative information about yourself. So later on in life, you might be at work and someone gives you a bit of criticism. It can result in biases. So it can result in things like overgeneralizations, where you're going to be like, well, I've always been criticized for what I do. I'm useless. I've always been told I'm not good enough. I've always been told I can't do things. I'm useless. I'm worthless. So Beck says there's two things: faulty information processing. Depressed people don't process information like everyone else. And they also start to develop this negative self-schema. They start to get negative information about themselves from their childhood. And the main part of Beck's theory was his negative triad. And that this is an idea that we have certain views about certain things in life, and that this can result in depression if our views are negative. So he says we have negative views about the world, negative views about our future, and negative views about oneself. So negative views about the world are generalizations to do with everybody else. So an easy example would be, everybody hates me because I'm worthless. You're relating it to everybody else in the world. Everyone hates you because you're a worthless person. Negative views about the future look onwards. They look towards the future itself. I'm never going to be good at anything because everyone else hates me. I'm never going to be good. You're looking towards the future and you have a negative view towards what's going to happen. Negative views about oneself are all about you. I am worthless. I am useless. I'm not good enough. So we're going to have a quick look now at an example for people in relationships and why that might result in depression. So if we look at the world, okay, the negative view about the world: no one loves me. Again, they've related it to everyone in the world and gone, there is no one out there who loves me. If you look at the future, I'm hopeless because things will always be this way. They have a negative view about how the future is going to look. There's no positive out there. There's no positive in the future. It's always negative. I will always be this way. I'm hopeless. The self: I'm ugly. I'm worthless. I'm a failure. All of those things have a negative impact on them developing a relationship in the future. And if you think you're ugly, if you think you're worthless, if you think you're a failure, you're obviously not going to be able to get involved in a relationship, and you might start to develop depression because of that. So Beck came up with these three ideas: faulty thinking, this negative self-schema that starts to develop in childhood, and the negative triad. The negative triad, remember, negative views about the world, negative views about the self, negative views about the future. And if those three things are negative, then that's when someone starts to develop depression. We're now going to have a look at the AO3, the evaluation for Beck's theory. And Beck's theory does have practical applications in treatment. And the main type of treatment that Beck would use is called CBT. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. And cognitive behavioral therapy is all about challenging people's thought processes and changing faulty thinking. And what the negative triad helps with is it gives us an area to start working with someone. It helps us look at the world, the self, the future. It gives a therapist 3 areas to focus on. If someone's developed depression because they have a negative view of the world, the self, and the future, then there's 3 areas where we can start treatment. We can start to address the world. Right. Does everybody really hate you? Does no one love you? Let's start getting a list of people in your life. Who are your close family members? Do your parents love you? Do your friends love you? And start to challenge those thoughts that someone has. Let's look at the future. Right? What evidence do you have there that the future is going to be negative? So it gives a therapist somewhere to start. It really applies well to the real world, and it translates very well into therapy, which is a great strength of this particular theory. However, it is an incomplete explanation. Okay, it can't explain all types of depression and all aspects of depression. It can't explain why some people get deep anger or hallucinations when they're depressed. And it also can't explain a very extreme version of depression. In some extreme cases, depressed people can develop something called Cotard syndrome. Cotard syndrome is where the depressed person gets the delusion that they are a zombie. So all of these things, the deep anger, the hallucinations, the Cotard syndrome, can't be explained by Beck's negative triad. It can explain certain parts of depression, but it can't explain everything. However, there is good supporting evidence for Beck's theory. And Grazioli in 2000 looked at 65 pregnant women, and he measured 2 things in them. He measured their cognitive vulnerability. So by that we mean their thought processes. How vulnerable were they to think negatively about the world, their self, the future? And also they measured their depression. So they measured these things before and after they gave birth. And what they found was that those women who had higher levels of cognitive vulnerability, so those who were more likely to think negatively about the world, about the self, about the future, were far more likely to develop postnatal depression. So this study shows that those women who have cognitive vulnerability, who think faulty, who have a negative triad, are more likely to develop depression after birth. However, the study is only done on women who are experiencing childbirth. Does this same study apply to men, to children? That's a hard generalization to make. So if we quickly recap on the evaluation points for Beck's theory, it does have practical applications. It can be used in CBT. It does give the therapist something to start with. However, it can't explain all types. It can't explain that anger. It can't explain the hallucinations. It can't explain Cotard syndrome. And there is some evidence. Grazioli's study on pregnant women does show that cognitive factors do play a role in depression. So there is research out there to support this theory.